Happy Thursday, everybody. Sam Shapiro back here with more of your Heat latest on FanArc. Today, we got a lot of interesting topics to dive into. First, centered around a Precious Achiuwa reunion. Do you think he could help benefit Miami's struggles in the front court going into this season? Drop a comment if you think a reunion between the former 2020 first round pick would be good for Miami. Personally, I don't necessarily know if that would be the case, at least on the offensive front, but in terms of when he had left Miami, going to Toronto, going to the Knicks, he hasn't really shown signs of being a premier starting type of small forward player, but could maybe add depth coming off the bench. The 25-year-old still pretty familiar with Miami, at least their culture and how they play, being drafted there way back when, just a few seasons ago. But on the offensive end, he's displayed a lot of versatility and athleticism, especially with the Knicks. His stats don't really necessarily show that, averaging about 6 points and 5 rebounds per game while shooting about 50% from the field, but still really struggling from beyond the arc, 27.8 from three-point range. So definitely I wouldn't say help out in terms of deep range scoring for this Miami team. And defensively, it doesn't really show on the stat sheet either. He doesn't really show on the stat sheet either, but the hustle of how he plays, I definitely think he picked that up during his first bout in the NBA with Miami, and is already pretty familiar with Heat culture. So I definitely think a Precious Achiuwa reunion could pose some benefits, at least in terms of overall two-way game to Miami's front court, but I wouldn't be so sad if Miami decided that they weren't really interested in ever revisiting a reunion with him in any way, shape, or form. I don't think he is the most special player in the entire world, and I think Miami definitely has better options to look into. I think, like I was mentioning before earlier this week, the potential swap between Rozier and Marcus Smart. I'm going to jump back into that in just a few seconds, but I think that was a better option to look into more for Miami, at least in terms of how they're going to move forward. And I don't think an Achiuwa reunion would be the greatest thing in the world, but could definitely fix some kinks in the armor in terms of Miami's front court right now. Again, drop your opinion in the comments if you think a reunion with Precious Achiuwa would be good for Miami at all, because I don't necessarily think it would be the greatest thing in the world. And jumping into what I had just mentioned, it is pretty apparent now that the Rozier for Smart swap didn't necessarily pan out, because Miami definitely not wanting to give up any future draft assets in that regard. And the Wizards definitely wanted more than just a swap for Marcus Smart, despite, maybe not staying particularly as healthy as he once was. I'm not entirely upset with Miami not wanting to give up future assets in terms of future draft picks from South Beach, giving that up for maybe just a guard and Terry Rozier, just because, if Miami were any other team and they didn't prioritize or utilize their draft capital in the way that they did over the last 20, 25 years, as I just mentioned, Miami being one of 4 teams to have the most winning season since the 1999-2000 season. And a lot of that just comes from how they've been able to move about in the NBA draft over the last couple of years, really utilizing a lot of great picks. Bam Adebayo and Tyler Herro being perfect examples. Neither of them were top 10 picks. Kel'el Ware was also just not a top 10 pick. Granted, all 3 were lottery picks, but they're all playing like they could have went 7th, 8th at least overall. And if you got a team that is able to utilize players like that they're picking up 14th, 15th, within picks 11 through 20, that's why a lot of people are hopeful about what Yaku Chones is going to do in the next 2 or 3 seasons with Miami, and why the ceiling for guys like Jaime Jaquez have been so high, and even Precious Achiuwa. So I just think that I don't really blame Miami for not making a move on Marcus Smart, because the front office couldn't really come to an agreement in terms of if they wanted to give up Rozier and more draft capital for a guy like Marcus Smart. It's a lot to cough up, and especially if you're going to utilize those players going forward. So let me know also in the comments if you think that Miami was kind of trying to get a little bit more, and not, if Miami was being a little greedy and not wanting to see what draft capital they could include in a swap for Smart. I think if you're looking at maybe just second round picks or maybe just one second round pick, it's not the worst swap in the world. But if you're giving any first round assets up, I think I can't necessarily blame the Heat organization just because of how they've been able to utilize those resources over the last 15, 20 years, really. I mean, they've made the best of those situations, and I just think that they're smart with how they use that capital in terms of when they have it. So drop in the comments what you think, if Miami was being a little bit greedy in not giving up a little bit more for in addition to Rozier for Smart, because I don't necessarily think that was such a bad move, to be completely honest with you. Moving over to some more interesting news with Miami. Unfortunately, this is not some great news. It's being reported now that Miami has been involved in one of the biggest sports heists ever. And ESPN NBA insider Amin El Hassan reporting that tons and tons of game-worn NBA Finals memorabilia from the Miami Heat had supposedly been stolen, being sold on the black market and the regular market. They haven't exactly said what jerseys or what exactly memorabilia, but when you hear game-worn Finals memorabilia, you're thinking at least LeBron James jerseys, Dwayne Wade jerseys, Chris Bosh jerseys, Shaquille O'Neal jerseys, that what I'm told, or what I saw at least, was worth millions and millions of dollars. And apparently they didn't have exactly who was involved, but they were saying a Miami police officer and somebody within the NBA community were involved in getting that memorabilia sold for what was worth millions and millions of dollars. Unfortunately, this Miami heist looking like it, whether it is the biggest heist in sports history, like it's being reported right now, I definitely don't want to jump on that because that is a huge claim to say, but it's very unfortunate to see historic game-worn memorabilia be victim of a crime like this, especially belonging to the Miami Heat. It's really unfortunate, one of the greatest jerseys of all time. And unfortunately, the ones that were graced by some of the greatest basketball players to ever grace the franchise, now being victim to a historic, what is being reported as a historic crime. It's really unfortunate and kind of crushing to say. I hope whoever is buying it is at least framing it or keeping it in a nice spot, and it's hopefully not wearing it just because of, not just the historic feel it has to the franchise, but anytime you see precious memorabilia involving sports and all being involved in a conflict like that, it's kind of just disheartening that, people would go and do something terrible like that and getting it stolen from out of the reach of the organization or the NBA community. So I'm hoping that in some way, shape, or form, it finds its way back to a good place or back to its rightful owner, whether it's, within someone in the organization or the organization itself. Just very unfortunate news to see that drop this week, and just hearing that, the potential game-worn stuff that could have been stolen. Again, not confirmed what exactly was stolen, but it's confirmed that it was game-worn NBA Finals memorabilia that was amongst some of the stuff that had sold for millions and millions of dollars on both the regular market and the black market. Very unfortunate news today, but what can you do, unfortunately? Moving over to another asset Miami had kind of just picked up this offseason. Lastly, Norman Powell is officially suiting up with the Jamaican national team for the, I believe, 2027 FIBA basketball tournament. He said that the upcoming FIBA World Cup 2027 America's pre-qualifiers going on in Mexico, he's going to be putting on a jersey for them and battling it out amongst some of the best basketball players in the world. The pre-qualifiers are scheduled for August 8th through 10th, and Powell, who was born in San Diego, is suiting up with Jamaica's national team because he has Jamaican heritage, and he's excited to be representing the country and is ready to contribute to the team's efforts. Very excited to see another Miami Heat player declaring to play on another national stage. Again, to me, I love seeing Miami expand their international footprint, bringing in players that have ties to, all different necks of the world. And it's just exciting that somebody that's hopefully going to be a 20-point scorer for the Heat this year is going to be playing on a great national stage and representing another team in that regard. I'm wishing him the best, and I hope that he, has a great season and that kind of translates into his play for Jamaica. Let me know in the comments how excited you might be to see him play in the FIBA World Cup now that he's going to be representing, some of his roots in that regard. But like I said, just love seeing Miami expand their international footprint, bringing in a player that has heritage outside of America, and I'm wishing him the best in playing for the Jamaican team and his regards overseas in that front as well. That's going to do it for today's episode. Be sure to drop a like on this video and subscribe to our channel for all great daily content pertaining to the Miami Heat. Once again, I'm Sam Shapiro, and thanks so much for joining us. Be sure to tune in next time.